One of the craziest things that has ever been revealed in One Piece is that there used to be these 4 ancient powerful gods. The Sun God, the Earth God, the Forest God, and the Sea God. And we also know that history repeating itself, inherited will, and the battle to defeat Imu are very much reoccurring elements in the One Piece world too. But I think to really accomplish Zebec, Roger, and Joy Boy's full dream, the 4 gods of the ancient One Piece world must return again. And if the same pattern is going to continue, 4 characters from our current modern timeline will ascend to those titles and save the world from Imu's evil domination. And yes, today's video is exactly about the 4 characters which I think in the series will become the 4 gods. And as has happened very often recently, the character that has made this really clear to me is my man, the greatest to ever do it, Rox D. Zebec, or I guess I should call him by his God-given name, Vivi the Zebec. Now, during the events of the recent chapter where Big Daddy Zebec was bad-mouthing Imu to their face, a lot of information about the Void Century, and maybe even before then, was finally revealed to us. And by unraveling this threat, I do think I've learned exactly who will be the biggest players in the modern era, which are the people who will eventually unravel Imu's empire and pave the way for the new dawn. So let's go and put on my patent Ohara and Company theory glasses and just toss out our previous biases and assumptions to really break down this completely new theory. Because honestly, dude, I'm serious. I do think that Zebec gave us everything that we needed here to uncover the current 4 gods of One Piece, who are gonna be Monkey D. Luffy, Princess Shirahoshi, Nefertari D. Vivi, and Davy D. Teach. So how did I come to this very crazy seeming conclusion based on some slanderous comments made towards Imu? Why are these 4 the next gods of One Piece? I really think it starts with how and what Zebec says to Imu during their interaction on God Valley. Because Zebec states that Davy D. Jones was the king of the ancient world and that his will is still being carried to this day. But then he also just makes a very FU style jab at Imu when he asks them who they feared more, Joy Boy or Davy, pretty much confirming that these 2 figures, Joy Boy and Davy Jones, are not the same character, but also showing that Imu gets full-on rattled by just about anyone who steps to them. Pretty much all bark, no bite it seems when it comes to slinging insults, but it's really cool I think that Davy Jones and Joy Boy are not the same person, because personally I love that fact because it just gives me more cool characters to break down and discuss and just fleshes out the ancient One Piece world so much more. As you can imagine, it's just a lot less fun as a theorist when 3 names or 3 titles are just given to one and the same guy, and I'm pretty glad that Oda seems to be clearing this one up finally now as well. Moving on though, I think it seems very likely that Davy D. Jones was also a god, just how Joy Boy would have been a god as well. Now, to be completely clear, when I say god, I don't necessarily mean that they were a literal divine power. Don't get it twisted here. I do think it's just that their powers were really insane, like Super Saiyan type wild powers. You know, we see it with Luffy, so much so that the average person during the Void Century might have looked at them like they were these godlike figures, the same way as I look at Jesus. Or not, I don't know. Especially if those figures use powers similar to the characters who may have actually been gods in the ancient world, the first world, like Nika, Imu, maybe the Hellflame Serpent, right? I do think the first world might have actually had actual immortal biblical style divine figures like Nika, and that is why I think that the Skypians and the Harley text have 4 gods that line up between them. But then later on, when it comes to the Void Century, which is probably the second world of One Piece, I do think that those titles of the Sun God, the Earth God, the Forest God, and the Sea/Rain God were actually just straight up given to people that were practically gods during the Void Century, who kind of inherited those original divine wills and, you know, also some of their powers. And so, who are we really working with here, huh? Well, we do know that Luffy and Joy Boy are the sun gods of their respective eras, right? And I think from that we can pretty much make a solid guess that Davy D. Jones during Joy Boy's era and now Teach in Luffy's era are probably gods as well, right? Not the first one to propose that idea. Instead, the real question is, which god do they actually represent? I mean, I've pretty much got 3 gods just begging me to be called out, and I gotta figure out who goes where here. But luckily, I do think that Imu, funnily enough, has quite literally showed us this already in the story now. Let me take you back to the good old days when theories were really simple. For example, during Imu's introduction in chapter 906, we do see them approaching a very large straw hat holding a bunch of wanted posters. And the only one that we can actually see is that of Luffy, which makes a lot of sense as we learned that Luffy is the inheritor of the will and powers of Imu's greatest ancient enemies. Honestly, Imu may have just been looking at the big frozen straw hat and Luffy's poster going,
"Oh shit, here we go again.
Why the heck do I have to deal with this all again?" Right? That's kind of the vibe Imu has in general. And it doesn't really get more on the nose than that. Imu, the evil shadow demon thing, whatever they are, hate Luffy and literally calls Luffy Joy Boy and or Nika. Meanwhile, Imu also keeps calling Rocksteady Zebec Davy Jones, drawing about as literal of a connection through that bloodline as is possible for Oda to put in the story. But going back to their first introduction, just a couple of chapters later, in chapter 908 to be precise, the biggest piece of evidence for this video is revealed. Because you see, Imu wasn't just holding on to Luffy's poster and some random ones. It's not the Straw Hat crew, it's not Shanks or Dragon or any of the many enemies that Imu does seem to have even to this day. Specifically, Imu was carrying 4 wanted posters, 2 bounty posters, and 2 photos. And the 4 characters that we see are Luffy, Blackbeard, Shirahoshi, and Vivi, all characters who are directly tied to Joy Boy, of course, through their different homelands, and are all characters who are either descendants, reincarnations, or carry the will of dominant figures during the Void Century. And that's the starting point why I think that the new 4 gods will be these 4 people. So I think you're starting to see the picture here, right? 4 gods, 4 posters. That kind of leaves us with 2 questions. Which god lines up with each of these 4 characters? And what would that mean for the endgame of the series? Because it's pretty clear that in the One Piece world, history is just repeating itself and sets up the next coming generation, but we do know it's all gonna end right here. I think you and me both expect that Imu should at least get defeated by this era's big dogs, and so lining them up to their respective gods is gonna be the first big step in figuring everything out, since ideally that'll give us a much better idea of their powers, roles, responsibilities, etc., right? Let's just get the easiest one quickly out of the way first, which is of course the Sun God, Monkey D. Luffy. And here's what we know, since out of everyone, Luffy is the only guarantee for this entire theory, of course. At this point, with his awakening of Gear 5, Luffy is no longer just the goofy, rubbery boy that we all love, but he's specifically now been called the new Warrior of Liberation and the next Sun God. During Wano, Oda finally started to peel back his Wizard of Oz curtain and show us what was actually happening in his show. And the real turning point, of course, comes in chapter 1018, when Who's Who, of all people I guess, gets into this very weird spite match with Jinbei and explains to us the legend of the god Nika. Which, by the way, would also make a banger title for a One Piece x Zelda game collaboration. Please, can we make that one happen, Nintendo? Thank you. Back to Nika. They are this mythical warrior of liberation who freed the slaves and brought joy to the entire world, kind of like Abraham Lincoln, but made of rubber, I guess. You get the idea. The Sun God's job is bringing big smiles, destroying oppressive governments, and making everyone around them just have a good time and laugh. So I guess in short you could say this role is just being Luffy. Really wasn't any room for subtlety there. We kind of painted that picture pretty damn fast. So it does make a lot of sense that chapter 1044 tied it all together really nicely when it was finally revealed that the Gomu Gomu no Mi was in fact actually the Hito Hito no Mi model Sun God Nika, giving Luffy the mighty powers of the Sun God, Joy Boy, and I guess the sun. But bro, I think like the sun is much more of a metaphor here, man, showing us like the true nature of peace and tranquility, dude. The Sun God abides. And of course, thanks to Vegapunk at the beginning of Egghead, we get a crystal clear confirmation of exactly that. Turns out there is no gum gum rubber fruit inside the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, and the fruit that Luffy ate was undoubtedly the Sun God fruit that the Gorosei originally spoke of. This finally made Luffy officially the white-haired god, Ultra Instinct Sun God Nika Gear 5. thing. You know, so you get it, right? Luffy is the next Nika, he's the successor of Joy Boy, and we do know he's destined to bring the new dawn. Most importantly though, we do know he's going to eventually drop Imu like it's nobody's business basically. Imu's the root cause of pretty much every major problem that Luffy's dealt with, and in some way, shape, or form, you can tie everything that Luffy's faced back to Imu. And narratively, Oda's been doing that very same thing with every one of Luffy's villains, preparing Luffy for the big bad guy on the empty throne. But Luffy is also nothing without his allies, we know, right? Without his crew, his Nakama. So when it comes to taking down Big Dog Imu, he will need the help of the other three gods, I would argue. So next up, let's get into it and talk about Shirahoshi first. Why not? Let's start with a weird one, who I believe is in fact, yes, the sea god or the rain god, depending if you're asking the giants or the Shandorans, I guess. Because Princess Shirahoshi is more than just that giant soft-spoken mermaid who cries a lot, because we know for a fact that she secretly holds one of the single most terrifying powers in the entire One Piece world, which is a Glock 19. I mean, she's the ancient weapon Poseidon, and honestly, that alone puts her in the same mythological league as Luffy's sun god connection already. I'm also pretty convinced that somewhere, somehow, there is a way probably to link all of the gods to the ancient weapons, but I haven't quite figured that one out yet. But, you know, give me a little bit more, give me a few weeks. I'm about to crack it. I think Uranus is really the only one I'm still hung up on, but, you know, different video. Anyways, yeah. I know that chapter 1138's Harley text doesn't explicitly refer to the ancient weapons, but it's pretty clear that in some way, shape, or form, all three of them are depicted on the mural that's tied to the Harley text. You see that right there? Right here, a mermaid with big raindrops around it and a bunch of sea beasts and sea kings. Or how about over here on the other side where, you know, between the two flames of the Hellflame Serpent and this big old dragon that I personally think is actually Nika, we see what appears to be the Arc Maxime, something that destroys things in the exact same way as Imu's ace in the whole ancient weapon Uranus, just maybe on a slightly smaller scale. Because, you know, it was Enel and he built a replica. So as you can see, the ancient weapons did play a very prominent role during this time, and I do think that Shirahoshi's birthright gives her a really big case here. Especially because we now know that Joy Boy left not one, but two poneglyphs on Fishman Island, and specifically talked about Poseidon and to the ancient mermaid princess on these specifically. And so what that leaves us basically with is a connection between Joy Boy and the original Poseidon. And then during the Odin flashback, Roger revealed that King Neptune's daughter would be Poseidon. So Roger was of course chasing Joy Boy's legend at the time, painting an even clearer line, I think, between Luffy, the goofy sun god, and Shirahoshi, weapon of mermaid destruction. I think it's pretty clear that she's gonna be a prominent member of Luffy's battle against Imu, but then why am I so confident that she's not only the reincarnation of this ancient weapon, but also the reincarnation of the sea god itself? Well, the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding is her title. She is Poseidon, a figure from real-world mythology. Poseidon, of course, is the Greek sea god who also commands rain, storms, big fish, and, you know, all that fun jazz. You get the idea. I mean, it doesn't really get more on the nose than that, ever. And when we take a look at the Harley text, it's pretty clear, I think, that her power matches up with that of the sea god as well. The Harley says, the sea god stormed, or the sea god raged, in response to the defeat of Joy Boy during the Void Century. And I think that's actually a fairly common misconception that this action for sure 100% is what actually flooded the world during the Void Century, but to me that's just not really the case. Especially when looking at the Japanese version, nowhere does it say that the sea god was the one who flooded the world specifically. It just says that the sea god raged, and the mural shows a figure looking like Poseidon with big old raindrops around them. And we have seen her use her powers before, which did not cause a flood, but then saw Uranus activated, which in turn very much did cause a big flood. What I'm trying to say, I think, is that I don't think that the sea god necessarily is the one that has to have flooded the world. There are other options, I think. That doesn't mean it couldn't still be the case, but for the sake of this theory, I just don't think that that's what happened. But what matters much more really is that as a sea god, their powers really should be this divine force that governs the waters, balances nature, and protects life. And that just is Shirahoshi bar for bar. And we already know that she's gonna help bring the new dawn either way, because back in chapter 649, her father Neptune, who is named after, by the way, another sea god, the Roman one this time, confirmed that Shirahoshi is the reincarnation of the Neptunian princess who was allied with Joy Boy, and that Shirahoshi is destined to play a key role in bringing forth the dawn of the world. So, if Luffy is the sun, Shirahoshi is the sea, just like Joy Boy and Poseidon, their powers are complementary. Luffy and the sun brings light, and Shirahoshi's dominance over the sea brings life. Water and sunlight, two things that every good, well, everything kind of needs to survive in the world, especially plants, unless you're a microba who lives like somewhere on those on the seafloor along those shafts. Then you just used thermal energy, but I somehow think that that's not relevant for what I don't even know what I'm talking about. Let's move on. If we wanted to get even more literary with it, even the emotional symbolism here fits really well. Shirahoshi's sorrow is what stirs the ocean. Her emotional whiplashing during the attack on her mother and the invasion of Fishman Island is what caused the Sea Kings to appear in the first place. And storming, raging, all the things that the sea god does are also super common metaphors for being sad or for crying. And what does Shirahoshi do more than anything else, of course? That girl cries a lot. And if she's anything like her ancestor, I do feel like the original Poseidon would have done the very same thing. Clearly, whoever that mermaid princess was, they were very close with Joy Boy, and the Harley text states that they stormed after the sun was killed. And if I was a mermaid princess with deep emotions and saw my dear old Joy Boy killed, I probably cry too. And actually something that I think got a little bit overlooked as well is that when it comes to this specific god, they have two titles, right? The sea god or the rain god, and both seem to be visually depicted on the mural about the god's story. Now originally this confused me a little bit, but I think at this point I figured out why this might be the case, because the Albathians, who are giants, bigger than anything, probably saw Poseidon as the sea god since they ruled over the Sea Kings, but to the Shandorans, a much smaller people, the way that Poseidon might have raged, cried, and caused storms in her sadness would just straight up be like rain. Heck, the rain might not even be some secret power of hers, but just the literal size and impact of the mermaid princess's tears. Don't forget that Shirahoshi's really big. But with that being said, there's now two gods down for you, leaving only the big guns left, the forest god and the earth gods. And I think that the forest god might just be the next craziest one with the newest information we've been getting, so let's just get into it, shall we? Because I believe that, no, not Vivi, but Davy D. Teach might be the next forest god of the current One Piece era. Yeah, let's unpack that one together, shall we? Because I know it feels a little bit odd at first to say that Davy Jones was the OG forest god and now Blackbeard will be, especially if you're a returning viewer who literally watched a video I made describing Davy D. Jones as Nika himself very recently. Anyways, this is a separate theory, separate train of thought, so stay with me here, right? That idea could be right, this one could be, none could be. I like to cover all my bases and I like having fun with these, and I think both have their arguments. And to me, the idea that Teach might actually become the next forest god all starts with the best, worst gift in my theorist life, which is, to this day now, the Harley text, which has haunted me for almost a year. When it dropped, this thing has given me so many things to theorize about, and I do swear it's almost too much and drives me absolutely insane as new possibilities keep popping up in the story. Now obviously, what is very important is the line about the forest god itself, because that's why we are here to begin with, right? It is said that the forest god was the one who tamed or raised demons, depending on the translation. The actual Japanese version says sending forth the demons, right? Now that could totally mean literal demons, like Imu's Domi Reversi type of vibe, But I do think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. As you very much know as a One Piece enjoyer, the word demon often symbolizes two things usually. Devil fruit users or the D clan itself. Remember how during their conversation with Cobra, Imu speaks of the D's like they're cursed children of some forgotten enemy? They are the devils that need to get snuffed out like some insignificant match? Well, wouldn't you know, that fits perfectly if the forest god was the one who created or empowered them. And if the will of Davy we recently learned about is actually the will of D, then that means that this origin, this forest god power that gave rise to the D clan, would trace right back to none other than Davy D. Jones himself, who is obviously the ancestor of Blackbeard and Zebec, paving the way for them to quite literally be his golden era and modern day descendants. But come on, do you think this is all I got? Hell no, dude. I've got a fever and the only cure is, of course, yes, more Davy Jones straight into my veins. Thank God Oda has given us a little bit more about Davy D. Jones recently than you may have even originally realized yourself. You see, Davy D. Jones's in real-world sailor lore, God, say that one 4 times fast. Real-world sailor lore. Real-world sailor lore. Anyhow, Big D Davy in our real world, not to be confused with Davy D. Jones, is this fabled pirate captain who was uber tier greedy, and as a result, he was condemned by the devil to live at the bottom of the ocean, kind of like SpongeBob, in a pineapple, probably, maybe, I don't know. But instead of being yellow and porous, he's cursed for all eternity, something like that, and Oda even nodded to this in volume 38's SPS, saying that One Piece's Sea Devil and Davy Jones myth were very much intertwined. Now, that actually got me thinking. We do know that the ancient One Piece world was an advanced society capable of some truly insane feats, right? That would line up perfectly with Vegapunk's theories of devil fruits being born from human dreams and desires, and there could have been a group of fledgling kingdoms led by Davy D. Jones, the forest god that created devil fruits, unlocking these forbidden powers of nature itself. Like some sort of badass god tier Captain Planet, and on the flip side, Imu, the Sea Devil, which I do think is different than the Sea God, probably punished that filthy greed by cursing the literal fruits of his advanced tech labor, and that's why devil fruit users might be sinking into the seawater and cannot swim anymore. And if Blackbeard actually is a descendant of the forest god, then a lot of his kinky little habits, that are kind of weird, start making a little bit more sense too, I think. For starters, the dude is obsessed with collecting devil fruit, is trying to conquer Zawardo, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to fulfill his own dreams. Riding in on his boat, named after his daddy, I can only imagine that dream of his that he loudly proclaims never dies is defeating Imu and avenging his father. And to do that, he's building his own powerhouse army like the forest god did, full of top tier devil fruit users, which does make sense because these fruits and their powers might literally be his actual birthright as a Davy clan member. And symbolically, Teach's role as the forest god does play very well on the whole sun god Nika thing that Luffy's rocking too. After all, dense forest canopies do block out the sun very well, leaving a lot of darkness and mystery underneath the shadows. A little bit of a stretch, I know, but I thought it was at least thematically fun to bring it up. Which now leaves us with the Earth God, and yes, the only person left to be that is Nefertari D. Lily. Vivi, we'll get to Lily. Now I know that this one is definitely the most out there entry on this list, but I actually do think that Oda made it clear that Vivi is really important for a really long time now. I've kind of felt like some crazy Oda plot twist was going to happen with Vivi for the longest time at this point, and we finally got that when it was revealed that her full name was Nefertari D. Vivi. She was MIA for such a long time, but was like so unbelievably tied to Luffy's rise to power, it just wasn't clicking for me. But now, Vivi just keeps showing up in world-shattering lore drops like it's nobody's business. Her dad confronted Imu, she escaped Marizua, Imu's obsessed with her and her family, and Vivi's like overall just the most sus girl alive in the entire story at the moment. And I do think that her role as the modern day Earth God will really help make all of that feel, well, a lot less confusing. So what do I think gives her specifically Earth God vibes? Because not exactly what you would think about right away with Vivi. Well, for starters, a huge factor for me is that Vivi's kingdom, Alabasta, is directly tied to Pluton, one of the 3 ancient weapons that we know of. Yes, I think there might be more than 3, but again, different video. Which, by the way, is conveniently named after the Roman god of the underworld and earthquakes. Now, for some reason, Pluton's location is written on the poneglyph hidden in Alabasta, which, when you really think about it, is a little bit weird at least, right? Like, it's not a rote poneglyph, it's just part of the Joy Boy story, and Robin just casually dropped during Wano that she already knew that Pluton was here all along because, you know, of her little side hustle as Miss All Sunday. Don't worry about what she did there. Which actually means that we've got a clear connection now between the Princess of Alabasta and the ancient weapon Pluton, and when you pair that with the tasty little fact that Alabasta's capital, Arubana, is actually over 3,000 years old already, it's pretty clear that this family's roots go way deeper than just the Void Century. Like, maybe first world of One Piece levels of depth? I would say so. Which, you know, can only mean one thing. Back to the mural and the Harley text, everyone. Follow me. Seriously, this mural is like a toxic ex-girlfriend at this point. I can't help coming back to it. On it, we see what looks like the Earth God wearing a crown that matches the one that Lily wore in her portrait. That's hanging, by the way, up very creepily in Imu's little jerk-off shrine, I guess. The same Lily who was one of the original 20 kings that founded the world government, of course. They are technically celestial dragons, Vivi, right? Except, unlike all the other 19 families, she did not move up to Marijua. She decided to stay behind on her desert island, probably sipping cactus juice and making questionable choices all around. And speaking of questionable choices, Imu seemed to be one of them, because there's just a lot of weird sexual obsessive tension between the so-called world and Lily, or maybe Vivi. How old is Vivi now? 18? Oh, okay. You got lucky, Imu, but still don't like the vibe of it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but weird vibes. Anyway, look, I'm not saying that Imu's down bad with this, but when you're clutching a centuries-old portrait of a desert queen like it's your ex's hoodie and sniffing, I don't know, like the evidence speaks for itself, I would say at this point. All I'm saying is the bloodline obsession does run pretty deep, and that weird fixation actually supports the idea that Lily wasn't just royalty, she might have also been divine. And the big theory for years is that Imu might be possessing Lily's body, so what if the only reason that Imu is the world is because they are inhabiting Lily, the OG Earth God? Like, maybe I've actually been interpreting it completely wrong. Lily might not be Imu's ex or the one that got away. Imu may have literally worshipped Lily. She could have been, I don't know, the Dua Lipa of the ancient era, I guess. Speaking of which, Dua, do you want to be on the One Piece podcast, please, Miss Lipa? I know you like One Piece, and if you're watching, we just, for example, had my man CDawgVA on, right? Just let me know if you're trying to hop on. Have your people call my people. Let's make it happen. That would be fun. And in the meantime, while I'm, waiting for my phone to ring for the call from Dua Lipa, you should really also check out my podcast with Connor after this video, which I'm gonna link in the description below for you. But obviously, there's a little bit more going for this Lily Earth God connection, as you can see, but I don't think it's there just yet. So to really boost this up even further, I want to run you back to an idea that I talked about in this video where we talked about Shakky. Because I have really good reason to think that the Earth God from the first world of One Piece might have been a member of the Kuja tribe, and thus, so was Lily, and by association, Vivi. And yes, I do know things are getting a little bit convoluted. Please stay with me. I'm gonna try to make this, as easy to understand as I possibly can. All right, so the Harley text describes the Earth God as battling the Sun God with their Hellflame Serpent, right? We can read that in the text. Let me repeat that. We see in the mural that a king, an emperor, or maybe an empress, this is very gender neutral, was ruling the first world with a giant snake by their side. Sound familiar? Well, it kinda should, because there's a literal island of absolute baddies that wrangle snakes for a living, but not in that way, you sick freak. Come on. Come on, get your head out of the gutter. Gloriosa, Shakky, Hancock, all these empresses rule with a giant snake by their side. And considering the name of the dang entire island is Amazon Lily, maybe Oda was hiding it all in plain sight, and the island might have just been once ruled by Lily herself. The Lily in her name literally might be her entire legacy. You know, a sort of cute little nod to the fact that the OG Earth Goddess bloodline was actually from that place. And you just know I'm gonna drop a real world lore bomb to make this even stronger, because we're not done yet, of course. Just call me Uranus, the way that I'm destroying your mind right now, like the island of Lucia. Sorry, Rustage was trying to teach me to rap over and drink sake, and I'm trying to get my flow going, but this one didn't even rhyme, so maybe another time. Anyway, Lily being a member of the Kuja tribe makes a ton of sense because of her family name, Nefertari. Because Oda, of course, pulled this one from ancient Egypt, and it's kind of just all there, really. Some of the more accurate translations for Nefertari as the most beautiful one, the most beautiful of them, or the most beautiful one of them all, and a dead ringer, the most beautiful of the women. That's just oozing Amazon Lily, and so coupling that with the big snake that the Earth God is affiliated with, I think you can kind of see what I'm getting at here, but I ain't done yet. Queen Nefertari from Egypt held many titles, including the Great King's Wife, which could frame some sort of big romance. I mean, the title Lady of All Lands really embodies that Earth Goddess vibe, and the most interesting one to me is that she was also known as the one for whom the sun shines. Could this be hinting that Nefertari the Lily was the lover of Joy Boy? That would track pretty perfectly with the pattern of its empresses falling for great pirates, right? As we did learn from Dr. Vegapunk, Joy Boy was the first real pirate. So what if Joy Boy and Lily, the Earth Goddess herself, fell in love and she left Amazon Lily to follow him to Alabasta? The Sun God and the Earth God, a love story that literally reshaped the entire world. Dude, Shakespeare could never. This also really lines up well with the entire letter from Cobra, which, by the way, Cobra, another Nefertari snake tie-in for you right there, reads from Lily's letter because she told her descendants to fly the flag of dawn, which of course, you know, seems to be that unifying sun symbol across a bunch of flags and crests, including Alabasta, Elbaf, the Kazuki, the Buccaneers, pretty much all the Joy Boy allies. You know the sign. And so maybe Lily's great mistake to Imu was falling for Joy Boy and not for them, like pretty petty guy vibes. Joybu Did I just say Joybu? No. What I wanted to say is that Joybu versus Imu is a horny boyfriend, she's not good enough for you grudge match, maybe? As I previously theorized, this would explain potentially why Shakky was chosen by Oda to be kind of at the center of the God Valley incident, because it might just be this sort of echo of Lily's bloodline that keeps reappearing when the gods go to war, you know, as the Kuja tribe might just be directly related to the heavenly wars throughout the One Piece history. By the way, this could also explain why Hancock has this unyielding attraction to Luffy, especially since her literal clone is also obsessed with the Mugiwara boy. We're talking about S-Snake right here, and yes, it could just be a fun little gag by Oda, but it's kind of weird because it seems like the love for Luffy/Joy Boy might almost be this genetic predisposition that's coded in her genes. That doesn't really bode too well for either Vivi or Boa, it seems. Really rough stuff. Now, the only big hole in all of this is that Vivi doesn't have a big snake friend, but who knows, maybe she's gonna be the one to reawaken the giant beast inside of the Red Line. That's probably a thing, right? It's got big snake gates that lead up to it that I didn't realize until very recently were a thing. The Albathians call it the blood-soaked serpent, so I think it really works. Or I don't know, man, maybe Karu's gonna grow some fangs and become this weird looking, you know, cockatrice, half snake, half duck beast. He can be Vivi's snake buddy, I guess, or she will revive her dead dad and he'll be her cobra. Quit asking me all these, I don't have the answers to everything, okay? Just a lot of answers, not all of them. All right, so how does this all now tie together? Well, we've got the four gods established, but how will they together actually defeat Imu? Well, I do also once again think that the picture is being painted pretty clearly. The world is repeating itself, and with each individual world of One Piece, the forces that oppose Imu are growing. The four gods couldn't manage to defeat Imu during the Void Century, and this elaborate plan was laid out by Lily, Joy Boy, and presumably Poseidon and Davy D. Jones to one day defeat Imu together that way, a plan that was then through the ages passed down to and attempted by Roxy Zebec, who was turned into a demon as well at some point. Roger then learns about this, then he laughs, and then he kind of just seems to help set up for Luffy's arrival as the Sun God. But Shirahoshi's role was actively spelled out that she's gonna raise the Noah with the Sea Kings when the time is right. Probably at this point, I think we can assume to save the people of the world when another massive great flood is happening, the Great Cleansing, since almost certainly Teach and Imu are gonna start using Pluton and Uranus, raising the sea levels more and more while they're fighting. But while this builds up, Teach getting stronger, growing an army of pirates, devil fruit users, and getting ready to avenge the Davy clan, we do know that, of course, in true shonen fashion, Luffy will inevitably be the one to destroy Imu with some crazy cool sun god mega punch or something, I guess. But what about Vivi? She's the only one we don't have a role for yet. Well, I do think that she might be the one to control the blood-soaked serpent and reawaken it like we previously mentioned, helping tear down the red line and uniting the oceans as one big planet again. All blue, voila. But I also think that more importantly, the Earth Goddess needs to rule the world again, because after Imu falls, there will be this massive power vacuum and the survivors of the world will need someone at the helm to keep the order. After all, if the world government just disappears, a ton of bad actors are gonna go absolutely crazy, so it's very likely that, Vivi's bloodline plot particularly will come full circle here, but she won't act as one ruler. Instead, I think she's well aware that the trouble that brings. So I would bet that Vivi might just, unite the kingdoms of the One Piece world, United Nation style, almost like some sort of, legitimate world government. After all, she's the princess of a great nation, technically a celestial dragon, respected by many, and an ally of Luffy, the great liberator. So there's just nobody better for that job than Vivi. But I've also left out a pretty big other figure out of this puzzle altogether, which is Loki, because he's got a lot of really weird godly symbolism going for him too, and it also really seems to tie a lot directly into that pesky blood-soaked serpent of hell flame. So what's going on with that? Is he part of the gods? He does have a mural spot after all right here. Well, if you want to hear all my thoughts about exactly what's going on with Loki, check out this video, because turns out he's probably maybe even the most important character Luffy has met so far. I'll break it all down. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Thanks to all of these beautiful, fantastic supporters of the channel on Patreon. Really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.